This is the High-Stakes Lowdown, a RotoViz podcast brought to you by the Fantasy Football Players Championship. I'm Eric Balkman from the High-Stakes Fantasy Football Hour and the FFPC. You can follow me on Twitter at Eric Balkman and the FFPC on Twitter at FFPC. Before we get into the show, I want to remind everyone that you can get a listeners-only 10% discount to RotoViz by using the code RVRadio2022. That's RVRADIO2022. Your subscription gives you unlimited access to all of the RotoViz content and tools, and it supports the podcast channel. Now, without further ado, here's the latest edition of the RotoViz High-Stakes Lowdown. Happy Tuesday and welcome to everybody tuning in. Certainly appreciate you watching either on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, streaming later, downloading later, whatever you're doing. We appreciate you consuming this content because we're pretty proud of it, that these FFPC players continue to do shows with us and offer their insight. The guys and women that are putting their money, have a lot of skin in the game, trying to win a 6 or even a 7-figure grand prize this year. I am Eric Balkman from the High-Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, from the Better Sports Network's High-Stakes Fantasy Football Show. You can follow me on Twitter at Eric Balkman. You can follow the FFPC on Twitter at FFPC. Reminder, if you have not taken advantage and played in the FFPC Weekly Challenge, remember, the FFPC is not just a season-long company anymore. We offer weekly content. You can pay $35 to get in, or you can pay $200 to get in, compete against 10 teams, compete against the, 30 teams, 100 teams, whatever you want to do. You pick one player per team from the NFL slate that weekend, and then you watch them ride all the way through, and you can win $2,500. You can win, if you want to play in the 10-team FFPC Weekly Challenges, you beat out the other 9 teams, you will get a free 2023 FFPC Main Event entry, and you can compete for $1 million next year just for winning one event here coming up in week 9. So check that out at myffpc.com. Let's bring in tonight's guest, ladies and gentlemen. He is a multiple winner of the Footballguys Players Championship leagues. He has a top 100 team in the contest right now that is featuring nearly 15,000 teams gunning for a $500,000 grand prize. Please welcome in Mr. Greg Pignatelli. Greg, welcome in. Thank you for joining the show this week. Appreciate it, man.
How you doing tonight, E?
I'm doing great. I feel guilty bringing you on because I know you're a Phillies fan, and I'm taking you away from the game. I have the game on here, and I'm seeing it. At least your Phils are up 7-0 here in the 6th. You got to be feeling good, man.
Makes it that much sweeter. I'm watching them out of the corner of my eye, but 7-zip. Between them and my Eagles, even my Flyers. Sixers would be there at the end. So I have no complaints, and I'm here tonight talking to you.
What we should have done is had the FFPC's resident Philadelphia sports fan, Dave Terpoli, come on, and we could have done like a 3-way thing on and just made it a whole Philly-centric show where we talk Eagles, where we talk Sixers, Flyers, Phillies, whatever. That's what we should have done. Hindsight, Dave's not available tonight, so it's just going to be me picking your brain and figuring out how you've had so much success in the Footballguys Players Championship as you continue to have success this year. Let's start off with my beloved Green Bay Packers. Watched them on Sunday Night Football. Finally, Matt LaFleur decided to run the football. And really, they had a coming out party this week, did Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon. Over 200 rushing yards for the Packers against the league's #1 ranked rush defense in the Buffalo Bills. Now, as we look at this, does this mean if you have A.J. Dillon, do you have to break ties in favor of Dillon this week as he goes from the toughest rush defense in the league to the worst defense in the league in the Detroit Lions, both road games? But now Dillon, all of a sudden, maybe looking a little bit more startable, Greg.
Now, here's how I look at it. I look at it from a logical standpoint. Your 2 best players are your running backs. Mm-hmm. I mean, truth be told, Rodgers, he's on his last legs. You don't have any wide receivers. So is it that far-fetched to say, both my backs can catch? I know they both can run. To me, feed them both 15, plus carries, throw the ball to them 2, 3, 4 times per game. It's just logical. I have heavily invested from a dynasty perspective and redraft in Dillon I wasn't willing to pay the price for Jones. But when Dylan was there for me, in the fifth round or so, sixth round, it just made sense. And since they made no moves at the trade deadline today, acquiring, Claypool or one of the other wide receivers out there, I'm still waiting for someone to sign Fuller, Will Fuller, and they're prime. But to me, yeah, you hit your wagon and just hope they've learned a lesson. And Dylan, this week I'm expecting, 12 to 14 carries and maybe 3 receptions. And with all the buys and everything else, I think you can get, running back 3, maybe running back 2 production out of him.
I think we should point that out too. The buy-mageddon, the buy-apocalypse going on this week in week 9. No Browns, no Cowboys, no Broncos, no Giants, no Steelers, no Niners. That means no McCaffrey, no Najee Harris, no Saquon Barkley, no Melvin Gordon, no Latavius Murray, no who was the guy the Broncos just got today? It's escaping me. I should know this off. I just went over it right before the show started, and now I can't. It's escaping me. But in any event, that guy, whoever that is, no Ezekiel Elliott, no Tony Pollard, no Kareem Hunt, no Nick Chubb. Kareem Hunt, who was not traded today either. But Greg, a guy who was traded, who you just mentioned, Chase Claypool, moves west. He goes from the Pittsburgh Steelers to the Chicago Bears. This is an offense that has not passed the football this year. Does this change? Does this make Justin Fields a starting quarterback in single quarterback leagues like the FFPC Main Event, like the Footballguys Players Championship going forward? And what does this do for Claypool's value? Because he was coming from the Pittsburgh offense where he was kind of the number 3, maybe the number 2, depending upon who you talk to there, with him and Pickens. But now, I mean, he's got to be the number 1 in Chicago. What are you doing with Claypool now going forward? As I look, and I should bring this up too, as we look at the Bears schedule here coming up in week 9. Chicago is hosting the Miami Dolphins. So Chase Claypool, new surroundings. Greg, what do you think?
Another guy, from a dynasty perspective, I have him in a ton of leagues. I was hoping he would get moved, fighting for targets from the rookie Pickett with Johnson and Pickens, yeah. So I welcome this move. I really thought, I didn't think about the Bears. Do they need a number 1 target? Absolutely. I don't think I'd be quick to jump on them and start them this week, but Fields has to throw it to someone. He's got an arm. I mean, he's got the pedigree for him. I think he was a fringe number 1. I'd be nervous as hell starting him, but because of his legs, it always helps. I think he's the number 1 there by default. He's a big target, 6'4". So I think eventually, and I don't even know if the Bears have had their bye week yet, but that would help if they hadn't, just so he can get acclimated to the system a little bit better. But I think within a week or 2 or a few games, he should be their number 1 target there. What's it mean in Chicago? Is he going to get 10 receptions for 150 yards? No. But could he get you the 6 receptions, 80 yards, and a score? I think that's very likely he can do something along those lines.
Yeah, the Pittsburgh Steelers have their bye this week, so Claypool avoids that. However, the Bears have not had their bye. They don't have it until week 14, so Claypool does not miss out on a game. The guy I was trying to think of, Chase Edmonds, goes from Miami to Denver. Now, George Payton, who's the GM in Denver, has already said that Melvin Gordon is going to continue to be their starting running back. But here's the thing that I want to point out. Now you have not only Gordon, beg your pardon, but Latavius Murray, who I picked up in a lot of leagues once Denver claimed him off or signed him off New Orleans practice squad. But now they have Chase Edmonds, a guy who is a proficient pass catcher and was being drafted, Greg, as you remember, as a 0 RB type guy in the late single-digit rounds in the Footballguys Players Championship. So high-stakes owners are definitely invested in him. Now we're looking at, kind of a quagmire here in this Denver backfield. Can you make sense of it between Gordon, Murray, and Edmonds? Or are you going to wait to say, to see what happens there as far as injury or people falling out of favor, and not start anybody until we know more here.
I'll tell you, that Denver team's just a mess. I mean, we all know what Russell Wilson's going through so far. I know they had some O-line issues. I honestly, it's unless you need the bye week running back, I can't really delve into that or dip my toe in the pool with any of them. Melvin Gordon, he is what he is. He'll probably get you 12, 14 carries, maybe a couple receptions. You got to hope for the goal line scorer. He's not going to run off a 50 or rip off a 50-yard run or anything by any means. I just think they're going to go heavy rotation, and you're going to get guys, it's going to be the flavor of the week. I don't know if they're going to ride the hot hand. You should see what happens, but I could see Gordon 12 carries and maybe another 12 carries split between the other two guys. It's a bit of a mess there. I don't think I would really, it's not like it's a juggernaut offense where you really want a piece of it right now.
I think another interesting thing that happened with backfields today was right at the buzzer with the trade deadline. The Bills and Colts hook up on a trade. Nyheim Hines goes from Indianapolis to Buffalo. Zach Moss and a conditional sixth go to the Colts. Now, we can touch on Moss here and disagree with me if you want. I think that Moss is the number 3 in Indianapolis. If I have Jonathan Taylor, if Deion Jackson's still out there, I mean, to me, he looks like the clear, handcuff running back there at this point with Hines now in Buffalo. And now here's the other thing with Hines in Buffalo. Buffalo tried to sign J.D. McKissick in this offseason. McKissick, it sounded like, was all set to go there. Then he decided to reverse course, come back to Washington. And then Buffalo used the second-round pick on James Cook. That hasn't necessarily worked out as far as a pass-catching running back right away that Buffalo has in 2022. Now they have a pass-catching running back, which is good, but I got to wonder, Greg, with all the people that had drafted Nyheim Hines in those mid-rounds, thinking that he was going to be a check-down candidate with Matt Ryan in Indianapolis, that is not going to be his role in Buffalo. Josh Allen loves to throw the ball downfield to Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis, Isaiah McKenzie, Khalil Shakir, and even Dawson Knox to a certain standpoint. So I wonder if Hines, if this is actually a worse move for his fantasy value. Zach Moss now goes to a worse running game, and he's buried on the depth chart there. I'm not seeing really a whole lot of winners in this deal. Are you?
No, I think I agree with you there. I mean, Moss is strictly a backup. It was probably more just about getting a pick and trading a running back. You want that depth there. And from Buffalo standpoint, to your point, it's probably more an indictment on Cook. I mean, he really should be that receiving back, but they're also, not sitting back and waiting on a rookie to develop. They're pushing their chips in. They want to compete with the, Chiefs and Eagles of the world in the Super Bowl. So, I think for a 6th-round pick, I think it made a lot of sense. But also from a real NFL standpoint, fantasy, again, I'm going to have to agree with you. I don't see a lot of value there. I mean, he's going to take maybe 2, 3, 4 carries a game away from Singletary. Mm-hmm. Maybe he catches, 1, 2, 3 balls. He's strictly bye week, filler, and rarely at that a desperation. But I've seen worse out there on the waiver wire. If you have to, get somebody, maybe he's out there. More than likely, he's on a team. So, I don't see a lot of upside there.
Now, speaking of upside, I was surprised to see, well, maybe not surprised is the right word, but my eyebrows were raised when I saw Jeff Wilson got traded from the Niners to the Dolphins. And he's reunited with Mike McDaniel, who was with the San Francisco 49ers last year. Wilson, to me, was the obvious backup behind Christian McCaffrey. Now he is gone to Miami, but I'm not dropping him because, Greg, I remain unconvinced that Raheem Mostert can somehow make it through a whole season without a significant time on the injured list. And if that happens, all of a sudden Jeff Wilson behind Tua Tagovailoa with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle on the outside, I mean, that's a pretty prolific offense. They've been putting up points so far. So I'm not dropping Wilson anywhere. But you look at the Niners, is it Tyrion Davis-Price, or when Elijah Mitchell comes back, is he now the new backup to Christian McCaffrey?
I think I read is Mitchell, his 21 days off IR begins this week, I thought.
That sounds right, yes.
So, I think worst case, they need to make a week or two without a I don't want to say, I guess, a quality backup behind CMC. But, I think for the Niners, it was sort of a no-brainer. I mean, Wilson was going to be third on the depth chart. They needed picks after they traded Trey Lance. They acquired, albeit late picks back. And to your point too, for the Finns, it was probably a great move. They absolutely upgraded. Wilson's shown, I don't know if he's a product of the system, but he's shown he can run behind a good line, and he's surprised even me. And I've even taken it. Why I drafted him in probably at least two of my three Football Guys, redraft leagues in the 19th, 20th round. And it paid off when I started him, a few games at least. I still kept him. I wanted to see what happened at the trade deadline. Luckily I did, because again, I think moving from the Niners to the Dolphins, albeit in backup roles, he's got a clearer picture to possibly starting there than he does, even with McCaffrey's injury history. So I think that definitely a good move there.
I think you're right. And I think, the other thing we should talk, the only deal we have not talked about so far is the one that went down right away. The first one this morning. And that was an intra-divisional trade. It's interesting that, my beloved Packers here, and all the hubbub was, they need a receiver. They need to trade for a receiver. They're the only team in their whole division who didn't make a trade today. Detroit, Chicago obviously got Claypool. Detroit and Minnesota hooked up on a trade within the division, and that was the Hockenson one. Hockenson goes to Minnesota along with a 4th-round pick plus a 2024 conditional 4th-round pick in exchange for a 2023 second and a 2024 third going to Detroit from the Vikings. And I think this is an indictment on how serious the Irv Smith injury was. I mean, we saw the report from, I think Ian Rappaport had it today, that he is going to be out a significant amount of time with this high ankle sprain. But now it doesn't really matter because TJ Hockenson is in Minnesota. So Greg, tell us a little bit about here. Is if you have Hockenson, you're still starting him, but do you envision his stock up or down given where he was at in Detroit? And Irv Smith, feel free to disagree with me. I'm dropping him everywhere. I'm not seeing the value on keeping him on my team, even if I had a team in a tight end premium Football Guys Players Championship or FFPC Main Event.
Yeah, high ankle sprains are nothing to sneeze about. I mean, if reports are correct and he's out, 6 to 8 weeks, where does that put us in the playoffs?
Yeah.
Are you gonna trust him coming back, first game back, second game back? I mean, I have him. I'm going to drop him this week. Hockenson, I have to think, and again, we're hitting on, and I don't think you're purposely doing it. You didn't know Detroit was going to trade him. Another guy I have in a ton of leagues. I love him. To me, it's got to be. I think he was underused with the Lions. You saw the one, huge game when they had some injuries at wide receiver. He goes from Goff, who I'm not a big fan of. Mm-hmm. I know we had a few good games, but to Cousins, there's a declining Thielen there, so he should be maybe not the 1B to 1A Jefferson, but he should be number 2 in targets. Will it happen game 1 or game 2 with them? Probably not. But, if I had him in my mind, probably, ranked maybe 6, 7, 8 overall tight ends, he probably bumps up a couple spots with the trade. I mean, again, dust to settle, give him a game. I mean, I'm starting him wherever I have him because more than likely I don't have a backup that I would trust more. You just hope that, tight end trades during the season don't happen a lot. So we don't have a lot of tape to say, well, running backs, you can just plug them in like McCaffrey and he, was a world beater in game 2. Wide receivers take more time too to acclimate. We don't know about tight ends. They don't usually get traded in season. But I just seem inclined to think that he's going to be bumped up, probably the top 4, top 5 tight ends at least in my book.
I think that's accurate, right? And I don't think that's necessary. The other thing to keep in mind here too is Hawkinson, I think, was averaging a career high in yards per game this year too. So it's not like he was having a bad year. And this to me is like, you go from Detroit, who granted was putting up points, but I think a lot of that was because their defense was so bad. Now he goes to Minnesota, and yeah, I think you're right. Sort of like a 1B option to Justin Jefferson. I think he's ahead of Thielen. But we'll see, because again, we don't have a track record, as you pointed out, to how fast these guys get acclimated to new teams. So that is something we'll be watching for, and it starts right away in week 9. A guy who got traded, not this week, but last week, was James Robinson. Now, this is his first full week getting some practices under his belt for the Jets, but he gets the Bills in New York. He gets the Bills at home this week. Is he still a sit, even with the full week of practice, because of this tough matchup? Again, the Buffalo showed that, they weren't impenetrable as far as the rush defense goes on Sunday Night Football, but they are still pretty good. What are you doing with James Robinson this week if you have him?
See, it's another great, a feel-good story coming off the ACL. Came out of the gates just barreling. No one expected it. And you want to root for him. And conversely, Breece Hall was coming on. He was looking like world beaters. Another great pick there. He goes down. So and what happened? The Jets lose. I think, what were they, 5-2?
Mm-hmm.
They were rolling at a point. If I recall the numbers between James Robinson and Michael Carter this past week, they might have had 12, 13 carries between them. So obviously they need to get kind of back on that track. Again, if I'm the coach, I know, Robinson's my running back and Carter's more my receiving back. I try and feed him 12, 15 carries, this week. Maybe, 1 or 2, 3 balls out of the backfield. You give him those numbers, he's absolutely a number 3, maybe even a number 2 running back. At this point, I think he's learned the playbook enough. And again, running backs, one of the easiest ones. Hey, go off tackle, go up the middle, go out in the flats. So
here's a handoff. Don't get tackled, right?
So it was kind of funny. Like, I was questioning what Jacksonville was doing over the last week or two. And then this happens. I don't know. But I applaud the Jets, and I didn't think I'd ever say that, for, not sitting on their hands. They made a move. I think it was the next day after Hall went down. And again, cost was low, so it just made a lot of sense. I think if you temper your expectations of what you're looking for them to get out of them, this week and probably going forward, if you're looking for a number 2, number 3 running back, who isn't, I think Robinson can probably get back to that level.
And to your point, 12 carries combined between Carter and Robinson last week. Carter getting 7 carries to Robinson's 5. Carter also getting 7 targets. He caught 4 of them. James Robinson did not catch his only target. But again, short week. We'll see what happens with the Bills this week. Shifting to the tight ends here. It seemed a couple of weeks ago that Noah Fant was really coming on in Seattle. I feel like something like 13 targets combined in weeks 5 and 6. And then you fast forward to weeks 7 and 8. He only gets 3 catches in those last 2 games. What do you do with him this week? And something to think about. This is a game between the Seahawks and the Cardinals that has a total of 50.5 points. You'd like to think that this would turn into a shootout. I know the last time these 2 teams played, it did not. Maybe it's different this time. Noah Fant, tight end premium scoring. FFPC owners want to know, Greg, is he a guy that you can look at flexing out?
I got to say, dynasty-wise, the other guy I love, there's just Seattle, I just have a bad taste in my mouth. I benched this past week Metcalf in more than a few leagues and Lockett in 1 or 2, and it burnt me. It comes back to, all right, even in the shootout, Walker's probably going to rush in a touchdown. There's one. What's Geno going to throw for 250 and 275, something along those lines? With both wide receivers playing, you still have Dissy there, and I think there's a 3rd tight end.
Yeah.
it's really it's a hit or miss. It's like flip a coin. Do you have better options? He definitely is not in my top 12. Is he in my top 20 for this week? Because of the buys, probably. It's just one of those things where you hope you have a better option. If you have to start him, you basically hope, hey, get me, 3 receptions for 25 yards and score. He's not going to get 6, 7, 8 receptions. He's not going to get you, 70 yards with the other wide receivers playing.
Colby Parkinson is that other tight end that we couldn't think of in Seattle. So he's also there as well. One of the things when we're talking about that Hockenson trade, we did not talk about the backups, the guys who are taking Hockenson's place in Detroit. Greg, do you have any interest in, and we'll focus this on redraft leagues here, Brock Wright, James Mitchell, those are the other 2 tight ends that Detroit's obviously expecting more now that Hockenson is in Minnesota. Tight end premium league. Do you have any interest in either one of those guys? Waivers go tomorrow. Have you put in any bids on those players?
No, I kind of look at it this way. If I could start Hockenson, but I wasn't comfortable, every other game he was giving me, wishy-washy production. Two guys that I don't really know anything about. Is it possible? Again, if you have a roster spot, then which one do you pick? It's another thing. But I didn't have a chance to kind of digest all the trades between work and then the World Series being on. It's one of those things where I have to believe, neither of them is going to be in the top 25. I know, tight end premium. I have 3 or 4 tight ends on pretty much all my rosters. You sort of have to. So they're rosterable. Are they startable? That's a different question. If you have bid bucks out there and remaining, you want to throw a couple ducats on one or the other and take a shot, and you have a spot or an open spot, you could do it. But I wouldn't expect much.
You don't expect big things from either of those players?
No. I think between that and you have Jameson, the rookie. I'm terrible with names. I butcher them all the time, but I know the players, but the names always, I just totally butcher them.
You're not alone. You're not alone. I do the same thing.
Well, I mean, I'll shoot some of my, buddies emails like trades, and they're like, "Who the hell are you talking about?" And I'm like, and they're like, "Well, you misspelled this," and you know what I was talking about, So.
I had a conversation with a guy today who we were trying to talk about Amari Cooper after the Monday night game last night. And obviously I'm in Northeast Wisconsin. So Amari Rogers obviously is, comes to, and I couldn't talk to him about Cooper because he kept calling him Amari Rogers. And I'm like, wait a minute, who are you talking about? Yeah, Amari Rogers. No, I think you're talking about Amari Cooper. And we, it happens,
Well, you get the first name right though, at least.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So the targets in Detroit that Hockenson had, are they simply going to Jamal Williams and DeAndre Swift, Amon-Ra St. Brown? Is one of these other guys like DJ Chark or Josh Reynolds, are they going to pick up targets, or is the needle not moving enough where all these targets are going to one entity where you want to focus on them in Detroit?
I think we don't know. The Chark was a guy I was high on coming in. Just he has the measurables and everything else, and he just was not producing at all, the first few games. To me, it comes back down to Goff and what you think of him. He's really, in my opinion, a game manager. I mean, he had those few big games. I get it. But if you're really expecting more than like 250 yards out of him per game, maybe 1 or 2 touchdowns, I think you're kind of joking yourself. Swift's a great receptions out of the backfield. I still question their usage of him, and something tells me he's not completely healthy. Every time I see Williams come in, at the 5-yard line, I jump up and down and curse. But what are you going to do?
Yeah, that's what I do too. Jump up and down and curse. That's pretty much all we can do. Let's go to the YouTube chat with a question right here. This is coming from this guy 12. He says, "Hey fellas, thanks for your work. I somehow have 3 quarterbacks in redraft: Jalen Hurts, Tua Tagovailoa, and Justin Fields." Now, he's in a league where he can trade these players. He wants to know which one he should trade away first and who to keep the whole way. Now, I always preface these trade conversations with you should probably deal away the guy that brings you the biggest return back, especially when you got two guys that I think are startable most weeks the rest of the way in Hurts, well, who's startable every week, and Tagovailoa, who's startable in most matchups. Not every single one, but most of them. So Fields, I don't think you're going to get a whole lot for him off the waiver wire, even with the acquisition of Claypool and even with how well he's been using his legs. That would be the guy I'd want to part with the most, because I don't know how much value he adds to your roster, having Tagovailoa and Hurts. I think you're going to agree with me. It's really, really difficult to find a trade package that's acceptable to trade Hurts away, because you're probably going to be bringing in multiple assets for Hurts. And if you're bringing in multiple assets, that means you have to cut multiple players, which is probably not a prudent fantasy strategy. To me, Tagovailoa is the most interesting here, because you still get the potential league winner in Hurts on your roster. You don't have to, Fields is just a whatever. You could probably cut him, because I don't think you're going to get a whole lot for him. But Hurts is an interesting guy that maybe you can trade away, get some pieces, maybe even some depth for the rest of the bye week gauntlet here, and get, maybe a number 3 running back, maybe a number 3 receiver, or maybe a number 2 at either of those positions, maybe a top 25 guy. And I think that's where your sweet spot is, to try to trade Tagovailoa to improve the rest of your roster, but not at the expense of your quarterback position. Greg, your thoughts on this?
Well, I'm a Philly homer, so
yep.
I would agree with that. I mean, Hurts is just is he going to be the MVP? No, it's probably going to go to Josh Allen, but damn, he's tearing up these other teams. And what I found over the years is you don't get a lot for quarterbacks. I mean, when you're on one, you only need to have one of those top 12. So you're almost going in, a little hamstrung, because how many teams are there? You don't have a lot of bidders, and it's all about supply and demand. So I agree. I would be shopping, Tua, and I think if you could fetch, depending on obviously on your needs, running back, maybe you go after somebody that you have in your 20 to 30 range. Maybe a Dillon. Maybe James Robinson, you take a shot on, some of these guys. But Hurts already had his bye week as well. So to your point, you could get away with just having Fields as a backup to him, but I would absolutely, post on the message board, hey, top 5 quarterback available to and see what, nibbles you get out there.
Yeah, no. And I'll take it a step further. I would just send out offers to the other, 10 or 11 guys in the league, see what happens with that. Because sometimes if you dangle something out there, somebody's more likely to respond to that. I post on the message board too. I just feel like I've gotten better results when I actually send, the offers out. And it may not work, but.
No, anybody who knows me or knows Wiley Tigers knows I'm the king of trades. So yes. I totally agree. I would probably do both. I'd probably post on the message board, but you throw it out there and see what comes back. I mean, again, you're probably only looking at 1 or 2 teams that might have that kind of need, but you never know. What you think of someone or some player is entirely different than someone else. So, they may be happy streaming Stafford and your boy Aaron Rodgers. But if I dangle out Tua and I'm not asking for a ton, maybe you get it accept on the trade. But
I think that the 3 teams that are most interesting here to me are 2 of the guys you mentioned, Stafford and Rodgers, and then potentially Tom Brady too. Maybe the Brady owner is a little miffed at how his season's going. He sees Tagovailoa throwing it, 50 yards downfield to Hill and Waddle all the time. Maybe he gets enamored with that. So if you don't want to send out offers to everybody in your league, maybe send it out to those 3 guys. Or Russell Wilson is another guy. If that guy is still married to Russell Wilson, you could maybe get something better from him too. That's always a possibility. So that's what we would say, this guy 12 as far as your quarterback situation here. Now, you just mentioned it. You are a Philly guy. I looked at some of your dynasty rosters. You have several shares of not only A.J. Brown, but Devontae Smith as well. Now, I don't know if you made trades for A.J. Brown coming into this season after the Eagles acquired him from Tennessee. I don't know if you drafted Devontae Smith in these dynasty leagues, but it's very telling to me that with such a dynamic offense going on in Philly, and you have several shares of both the number 1 receivers, or both the top 2 receivers in Philly, it seems to me that you knew something with Brown and Smith. Did you have an inkling going into this season that this Eagles offense was going to be explosive and you would try to get these shares, or did you already have shares of these guys?
I sort of both. I did see, the offensive line has been stellar for years. I have a lot of shares of Goddard. Most of my dynasty leagues, I don't like actually having both receivers there. So if I was to sit back and look at most of my teams, I think I had AJ Brown as a Titan. I drafted Devontae in a lot of leagues last year as a rookie. So I don't want to say I lucked into AJ Brown, but it's almost like there's not enough balls around for them both to produce number one numbers every week. But I do, in my opinion, they're both number one receivers. I mean, they're 1 and 1A. You'll even in AJ Brown's, great week, 3 touchdowns, everything else. I think Devontae still had maybe 6 receptions, 60, 70 yards, something along those lines. I want to say he got me 12, 13, 14 points, which wasn't bad for not scoring. But it's to your point, it's a dynamic offense, and I just wanted a piece of it. My only regret in all, my few redraft leagues was not getting Hurts. Believe it or not, in the 4 leagues, my 4 redrafts, I didn't draft him anywhere, and it wasn't because I didn't want him, but in at least 2 leagues, he got taken 1 pick before, and I had to settle for Kyler Murray. And in the second one, I think he went maybe 3 picks before mine. I had him lined up, but he got sharked away from me. But it just all made sense. Did I know Hurts was going to do what he's doing? No. I mean, I didn't expect this. I mean, this was really a make or break. He's playing for a contract, and we're just happy to be along for the ride here.
He's playing for a contract. He's probably also playing for an MVP this year, the way that his season's been going. Could be him and Josh Allen. Boy, wouldn't we love a Philadelphia Buffalo Super Bowl? That would be a lot of fun to watch there. Staying in that same area of the country here in Baltimore, we saw Rashad Bateman is going to be out this week and maybe more than this week. You also have the 6 teams on bye this week, which I mentioned at the top of the program. Devin Duvernay, it seems like, this guy continues to make plays, even sometimes when Bateman is healthy. Is he nearing must-start status in FFPC this week? He goes to New Orleans this week to take on the Saints, and I just want to check the total on that game because I'm very curious as to what it would be. 48.5 right now. This is the Monday night game this week. So your thoughts on Devin Duvernay against the Saints with no Rashad Bateman?
Well, and another guy vying for his contract on Lamar.
Yeah.
But, I mean, we know that's the Lamar show there. But who's he going to throw to? Who's running the ball there? No Dobbins. Drake is the number 1.
Gus Edwards banged up right now too. You're right.
Yeah, and Mark Andrews is banged up as
banged
well.
Up. Absolutely.
So how many catches can Lively get? Likely. We see him bad with names.
He is playing Lively, so I get it. Isaiah Likely is playing Lively. Yes.
So I have to say, if you temper your expectations, he's startable. Is he a number 1? No. Can he get you number 2 or number 3 numbers? He could go for anywhere from maybe 40 receptions for 40 yards. I'm sorry, 4 receptions, 40 yards. He could have 1 long bomb, a couple rushes, and get you, 20 points easily. So, he's one of those boomer bust type guys. But even as bust, I think, he's got to get you 6, 7, 8 points is probably his floor. So, hey, for the bye weeks and everything else, give me that. Give me shares of Lamar, even if Lamar throws for 180 yards. Who else is he thrown to?
Yeah. And I think, you think about, we could go through it here. We know David Njoku's hurt. His team's on bye this week anyway. Amari Cooper is out. No Michael Gallup. No Dalton Schultz. No Tony Pollard. No CeeDee Lamb. Cortland Sutton is gone this week. Jerry Jeudy is out this week. No Wan'Dale Robinson. No George Pickens. No Deontay Johnson. No Pat Freiermuth. No Deebo Samuel, who was hurt last week. No Brandon Ayuk. No George Kittle. There is a severe lack of pass catchers this week in the NFL. And while, Devin Duvernay, you kind of want to, it's one of those yuck faces when you would hear the name. But right now, no Bateman. all these teams on bye. Yeah, it should be a yum face that you're making this week with Devin Duvernay. I'm totally on board with that. Chuba Hubbard missed last week. Deontay Foreman had an awesome week for Carolina. If he can go this week against the Cincinnati Bengals, how concerned are you about him taking away touches for Foreman? Let's put this in fantasy terms. For me, still going to be tough to sit Foreman, especially with the Bye-Mageddon going on. But does Hubbard make your flex list at all if he's active?
Well, and let's not forget too, if not for a bonehead move by DJ Moore, they win that game.
So they win the game. Yeah.
Run the ball. Is there going to be enough to go around? And, Foreman's one of those guys. I almost liken him to okay, I'm going to say this, but he's like a Derrick Henry type. He's not going to really catch you more than one or two balls, but he's the grinder. Mm-hmm. I think they have the formula. Give him the ball 15, 18 times. Hubbard, is he flex worthy? It's a tough one. It's
on a normal week, he would not be, right?
Yeah. Again, if you're happy with, I don't know if he's a lottery ticket or not. He doesn't have the ceiling of some of the other guys out that might be out there. If you'll take 4 points out of your flex and be happy with that, with everything going on, maybe he catches a few balls. I don't know about that though.
Low ceiling, low floor type guy.
Yeah.
Very limited upside.
That's how I'm feeling on that. Yeah. Now, Foreman, obviously I'd start. Hubbard, if you need somebody in the flex in the emergency, you could do worse, but I would think you could probably do better in the waiver wire possibly.
Well, speaking of the waiver wire, Mark Ingram is going to be out roughly a month, maybe not quite a month, but with a sprained MCL. Is there another Saints running back? I'm specifically speaking about Dwayne Washington here. Is he a guy that you're going to be putting any bids on the waiver wire, knowing that if Kamara does go down, Washington would conceivably be the next guy up?
So another truth be told, I'm rooting against the Saints all season because the Eagles have the first round pick. So to let them lose every game from a fantasy perspective, I almost think their backup running back is Taysom Hill.
Yeah.
I think he's coming off 8, 9, 10 carries. Kamara is not the most durable guy. I could see the same thing, giving Kamara 14 carries, giving Taysom, 7, 8 carries. If Kamara goes down, is Hill a starting running back? I don't think so, but he's done a lot of things that I didn't think he could do either. I'm not sure. I think when they move from Jameis to Dalton, it's helped steady the offense a little bit. I just don't know if it's a good enough offense for you to throw the number 3 running back in there and think you're going to get, gold out of it.
Greg, I've asked a few high stakes players throughout the season this year about the waiver wire, and some of them have told me that they do feel that the high stakes waiver wire, and I don't know if this is because, accessibility to information, smarter players, what have you, but they feel like the waiver wire is a little bit more bare this year than it has in years past. Has that been your experience? Do you feel like you're going maybe a little heavier on certain players than you normally would because it just the Bucks have not been flying around the waiver wire like they have been over the last half decade? Has that been your experience this year?
I don't think there's been many out there that I was like, damn, if I would have spent an extra $20 on my Bucks. I think in most of my leagues, I still have 900, $850 left, something along those lines. If I recall, there was only a few. Taysom Hill was one of the ones that was probably on every waiver wire. But again, who knew as a tight end you could start him and get the points that you could get out of him? Who was out there, and I believe I got him in more than one. Curtis Samuel. I'm up pretty early. I top of my head, maybe $20-$30. I didn't have to break the bank by any means, but I haven't really seen anybody out there that I had to say, even the Foremans of the world, he was on a team. I think, with 20 spots, especially from a running back position, you usually don't have much out there to begin with. So, it would almost take like a devastating injury to someone and then you let the Bucks roll. But I haven't seen that. And I haven't really regretted, like I said, not putting some extra ducats into, getting someone. It's been bare, but I don't know if it's just everybody, to your point, the information so readily available that people a few years ago, 10 years ago, might have been on the waiver wire are now in the 18th, 19th, 20th, spot on a roster. It might be, but it's just, I haven't seen anybody this year where I really say, damn, I really wanted them.
I almost see it, you bring up the devastating injury. It almost seems like for me, for running backs, and it seems like in the majority of my leagues, I play in the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship for the majority of my leagues. And in that format, you have to start 3 receivers, and you do have a flex in there. But I usually am pretty weak at my second running back. That's usually where I choose to be weak in the draft. So I'm always going after these running backs off the waiver wire that are an injury away. But Greg, it almost seems like when there's been a significant injury to any of these running backs, the backup is almost always unequivocally owned. So when there's a devastating injury, I'm going after the former third string guy, who's now the second string guy, and just hoping for not hoping for an injury, but taking advantage of an injury then, because it just seems like the backups are even gobbled up at the running back position during the draft process.
Right. And the funny thing is, I'm actually the opposite of what you just said.
Okay.
I have been running back centric for 25 plus years,
Mm-hmm.
And I let the draft kind of come to me. I don't do mock drafts because it's just anything can happen.
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna have somebody, that you thought was going to be there in the 3rd round, and there's a Browns fan out there who takes Chubb, earlier than you thought he was going to. So pretty much every one of my football guys drafts, I walked out probably with 4 running backs out of the maybe top 7 rounds. But you're right. I mean, and even at that, I was trying to get ahead of the curve. And like I mentioned before, I took Jeff Wilson in a few leagues.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't. It's almost like the Niners were one of those like the Patriots running back core. You really don't want them. It's like a necessary evil. You have to shower after you draft one of them. But they were better than what was there, and he was the number 2. And to your point, all the backup running backs are drafted. And in some cases, even the 3rd running back was, drafted. I have what's the number 3 running back, Johnson in Cleveland.
Yep.
I've been waiting for the trade deadline. I thought for sure if he didn't get traded, Hunt would get traded. Mm-hmm. Well, guess what? I still have the number 3 running back in Cleveland now, So will he eventually make his way to the waiver wire? If there's something else out there that I need, maybe. But again, he could be, and I don't want to jinx myself with what I'm about to say, but let's just say if the number 1 running back goes down there, he could elevate to that and Hunt stays in his backup role. Who knows?
I remember when I was doing the live events out in Las Vegas for the FFPC, a guy that was consistently getting drafted in the last few rounds of, the 3K leagues and the 5K leagues and the 10K leagues, Ty Chandler in Minnesota, who was the 3rd string running back. Now those guys, and women who draft in those, there are no sleepers, and people that you're seeing in the football guys go super late, or the main event goes super late. They're taking them in round 15 or 14, So Ty Chandler, I was in, but now what happened to him? I think he never got in, and he's on IR right now. So it's just one of those things. You're looking for that lottery ticket late. At least I was on a lot of my leagues, because it's rare that league winners appear on your waiver wire, but sometimes they do. And one of those people this year could be Deshaun Watson, who I just checked on Fantasy Mojo, fantasymojo.com, and Fantasy Mojo on Twitter. Darren Armani is going to be my guest on the Better Sports Network High Stakes Fantasy Football Show tomorrow night. Make sure you're listening to that. Not you necessarily, Greg, but you and everybody else who's watching this. But Darren Armani, I checked out his stats, and Watson, I think, was still floating out there in the football guys and the main event in roughly 10 to 15% of leagues. So if you still want a quarterback, I mean, he is going to be back in the next couple of weeks. How have you been treating him, Greg? Not only right now, but maybe over the course of the last 3 or 4 weeks when people have been adding him?
I'm trying to think if I walked out of the draft with him. So in my 3 football guys leagues. I believe I have him in 2, if not all 3 leagues. Now,
Okay.
here's the thing, though. I think I needed, because of bye week, I had to drop him in at least one, but I picked him back up the next week after the bye week. My quarterbacks are, I have Kyler Murray in one. I have I have Russell Wilson in another, and I have Burrow in another. Am I going to start him when he comes back over 2 of the 3? No, but he's my lottery ticket, to your point, in the league where I have Russell Wilson. But it's almost one of those things too, though. Again, start of the playoffs, am I going to be comfortable with him not playing a game? Are the Browns still going to be in the playoff hunt where they're really going to go all in and he's going to be winging the ball around? He's definitely worth being on a roster. If you're telling me he's available in 10 to 15%, I would think that should be less than 5%. Of the leagues, or he should be rostered everywhere. He's definitely a lottery ticket. I don't want to go off on a tangent, but there's also, you have Odell Beckham out there too. Is he, what's he going to do? And I still have Will Fuller in a couple of leagues. It's just there's few guys out there where, as you're, like we said, the 19th or 20th bench spot. Would you rather have one of these guys or the number 3? Zach Moss, the number 3 running back in Buffalo, who now is traded. That's kind of what it comes down to. You have to look for the upside. And, Watson, for the last 4 games of the playoffs, he could be a top 5 receiver that you just got off the scrap heap or the waiver wire or your 20th round pick. So it's definitely, he should be rostered. He should absolutely be rostered.
I think you hit the nail on the head about one of the biggest differences between home leagues and office leagues or whatever, and then high stakes fantasy football. The margins, are razor thin, and any little advantage you can get, sometimes the difference between winning a league and losing a league is a pickup like that, right? Where he has a big, league championship week for you, and you end up, he spurs you to the championship round, and maybe he carries you through the championship round to a big payday, and it's not just Watson, it's Beckham. It's players like that. Will Fuller to a certain extent too. I think that, what's the value in rostering, a low ceiling guy like Randall Cobb or somebody like that, as opposed to Will Fuller, who, when he was healthy last year, was, putting up top 10 wide receiver numbers. So right. There is something to be said for that. And I think, it's probably not going to pay off, but in the event that it does, then all of a sudden you're looking at a serious payday, which I think you pointed out. Greg, one final question here before we let you enjoy the last, essentially inning of the World Series here. I know I kept you on a little bit longer. Give us a sleeper this week that not a lot of people in the FFPC, not a lot of people in the Footballguys Players Championship will probably be starting in week 9. I know it's difficult for both of these questions here because most of the sleepers are going to be started because of 6 teams on bye. And then maybe a player that you might be forced to start, but you're a little skittish of it. Even though he's going to be starting in the majority of leagues, you're lowering your expectations on him for this weekend.
So this was a bit of I scratch my head on this one. This is a tough one. But I'm going to throw out a sleeper. He's a guy I've liked his potential. He's got the measurables. I know he had a pretty decent game last week. Terrence Marshall of the Panthers. There's a guy who, PJ Walker, he's slinging it. Is he going to throw another 300 yards? Probably not. He needed overtime to do it, but number 1 cornerback should take DJ Moore. So again, is he going to break free for 10 receptions for 150 yards and 2 scores? No, but could you expect maybe like a 6, 7, 8 receptions and see what comes with it? I think it's fair. Your point before with the Hubbard, I don't know how that's going to affect him, but who else are they going to throw to there too? That's, again, is he on the waiver wire? He might be. I know he's on a lot of rosters, in most of my leagues, just because the same thing. People see the potential when he came out of LSU, and he's only in his 2nd year. So, you maybe take a shot with him. Your second point, I'm going to go with Justin Herbert. The injuries are racking up there for the Chargers. He doesn't have Big Mike. Keenan Allen is questionable. And, it's probably going to be an Eckler show. Just feed him the ball, throw it to him. So he'll get some points there. But if you're, expecting a shootout and him to get you, 303, I don't think it's going to happen. Is he going to total fizzle out and 150-1? No. I don't think he's going to be, he's not going to get those top 5 quarterback numbers like he typically does.
To your point about Marshall, we don't know if Marshawn Lattimore is going to play in this game against the Carolina Panthers this week. Or no, I beg your pardon. That's the Saints. The Panthers. I'm an idiot. Way too long of a Tuesday, apparently.
They're playing Cincy?
They're playing Cincy, exactly. Who just got housed on Monday night by Cleveland, which means they're going to be coming off. They are at home, but they are coming off the short week. And Terrace Marshall right now only owned, this is surprising to me, only owned in 13% of main event leagues and only owned in 10% of Football Guys leagues. I think that percentage is going to spike in both of those formats when the waiver wire gets processed tomorrow. This is why you tune in to the RotoViz High-Stakes Lowdown for little nuggets on players like Terrace Marshall from a guy who's done it before, won multiple leagues in the Football Guys Players Championship, Mr. Greg Pignatelli. Greg, you have a couple of teams, at least a couple of teams in contention, way up high on the leaderboards. I think you have one in the top 100 in a contest that features almost 15,000 teams. Good luck to you the rest of the way. Not only that league, but all your leagues this year. I know you have a ton of dynasty leagues as well. One of them you're really crushing, so congrats on that. Good luck to your Phillies the rest of the way. Good luck to your Sixers getting back on track. The Flyers just starting their season as well. It's an exciting time to be a Philly sports fan, especially when you consider the Eagles are still undefeated. Thank you so much for joining the show tonight, man. Be good, and we'll talk again real soon.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you, Greg. The Wily Tiger himself, Greg Pignatelli, dropping some knowledge here on you FFPC players and Football Guys Players Championship players here on the RotoViz High-Stakes Lowdown. That will complete our show tonight, ladies and gentlemen. I do want to thank Greg Pignatelli for hopping aboard. Certainly appreciate him making some time. He's rooting for the Phillies. They're about to go up 2-1 in the World Series, and he's talking fantasy football with me. I love the FFPC players. They're so great. And what the FFPC players can do this week is play in the weekly challenge for week 9. You go to myffpc.com, you click on the weekly challenge link. There's no draft. There's no salary cap. You just pick your 10 players, or you want to play in the slim format without kickers and defenses. You play in the classic format with kickers and defenses. You can only pick one player per NFL team. Prize pool, or not the prize pool. Prize pool is big. The pool of players getting a little bit smaller this week with 6 teams on bye. But certainly when you can only pick one player per team, it does open things up a little bit more. You can play for as little as $35. You can play for as much as $200. And remember, if you sign up for the 10-team league with a $200 entry, the winner of that league will get a whopping 2023 FFPC main event entry for free. You can play for $1 million next season just by beating 9 other players this weekend. You cannot find a better offer than that on the FFPC website until the playoff challenge launches, which will be in a few weeks, and that'll be a lot of fun as well. I do want to thank everybody for watching the RotoViz High-Stakes Lowdown. Remember, we will be back at 10/9 Central next Tuesday on this program. Don't forget, we do have some other programs coming up on the Better Sports Network tomorrow, which I invite you to download the app. It's free in the Google Play Store and the App Store. When you download that, you can not only communicate with the guests and the hosts on those shows, but you can register for all the great prizes. You've been giving away a ton of autographed memorabilia, and all you have to do is click on that fun button. It's really, truly awesome. So I invite you, even though you can watch the show on YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook, it's so much more fun on the app, and it's better on the app. So make sure you're downloading that. My show, the High Stakes Fantasy Football Show, will go live at 10/9 Central tomorrow night. We'll go all the way up to midnight. We'll probably talk about some FFPC waivers that are going on during the show as the waivers get processed tomorrow night. We'll probably put together a weekly challenge lineup for you tomorrow. And who is my co-host? It is none other than Fantasy Mojo's Darren Armani. He will be with me from 10 to 12 Eastern tomorrow night. That's going to be a lot of fun. And then Farrell Elliott and myself, along with an extra special guest, bringing it to you live on Friday night, 10/9 Central, the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, only on this FFPC YouTube channel. So make sure you're watching that live as well. Thank you so much. Enjoy your Tuesday night. Enjoy the rest of the World Series, everybody. Good luck on those waiver bids tomorrow in the FFPC. And I will see you here at 10/9 Central Friday night for the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour. Thanks for watching, everybody. Thank you for listening to the High Stakes Lowdown, a RotoViz podcast brought to you by the Fantasy Football Players Championship. And thanks to Grapes for our theme music. Please review the podcast on iTunes under the RotoViz radio feed. It helps us find new listeners. Contact us via email, rotovizradio@gmail.com. We'd love to hear what you think, and follow us on Twitter @RotoVizRadio. And remember, you can always support the show by subscribing to RotoViz at a 10% discount through the NFL podcast homepage, rotoviz.com/podcast.